Also developing this morning, more than 50 anti-ICE demonstrators have been arrested after a protest in New York City. The chaos broke out in the lobby of a Hilton on Tuesday night, where demonstrators believe agents were staying. At the same time, federal agents are expected to make more arrests in Minneapolis after a violent demonstration at a hotel where federal immigration officers were staying. Demonstrators were caught on camera. They were spray painting walls and windows. They were breaking glass there, breaking those windows, trying to force their way into that hotel in Minneapolis. Attorney General Pam Bondi said so far 16 suspects have been arrested and were charged with multiple counts, including assault, resisting arrest, or impeding law enforcement.
Boy. So we got to talk about more stories involving the unhinged lunatics who are basically a mindless mob, okay? They quite literally just believe that they can show up anywhere to protest places that may or may not be harboring ICE agents, right? They are hunting down people who work for the Department of Homeland Security, that work for ICE, that work for Border Patrol. And let's just say it is starting to backfire, okay? Because these lunatics don't seem to really do their due diligence before they try to run up in a place like, for example, a church and disrupt private citizens, right, minding their own business. And that leads me to a story out of the Los Angeles area where you had these unhinged lunatics pull up to a restaurant where they thought that ICE agents were eating, right? And instead, what they found out is that they were actually TSA agents, and they ended up harassing people who had absolutely nothing to do with ICE, to the point where the police had to be called because, again, the agents of chaos, the mob, was so out of control, losing their minds over the possibility, the prospect that, you know, ICE agents could be eating, right, having dinner in their neighborhood. Take a look.
Oh, you can, let me show you, but...
You want to harass people, huh? No. How does it feel to be fucking harassed?
No.
So he did not deny he does work for... He did not deny it.
We're from TSA.
He did not... Look.
Fucking matter. How does it fucking feel?
He did not deny it. He did not deny it.
How does it fucking feel to be harassed?
Look.
How does it fucking feel?
That's you.
How does it feel?
Look, he said it. He said it was him.
Confirmed it. He confirmed. He did confirm. He works for Homeland Security.
Lo confirmó.
Wow, you're lying. No.
Federal agents are forced to call the LA County Sheriff's Department for backup after a crowd becomes unruly. Fox 11's Matthew Seedorf with this story in Linwood. There's more to this one. Matthew?
Well, this appears to be a case of mistaken identity. Some TSA officers were eating dinner here. Someone thought they were ICE, and then the crowd showed up. Whistles and horns blaring of anger in Linwood.
Real agent got this from ICE.
A crowd of anti-ICE protesters swarming a restaurant after reports that off-duty ICE agents were inside, but law enforcement sources tell Fox 11 this may be a case of mistaken identity. The agents weren't ICE, but instead TSA officers eating dinner.
ICE.
LA County Sheriff's deputies called in for crowd control, eventually calming the situation. Talk to y'all about what happened?
Oh, sure. Who are you guys with?
We're at Channel 11.
Oh, Fox?
Channel 11, Fox 11, yeah.
Oh, okay.
We asked an organizer what happened.
No comment.
Oh, we just want to ask what happened.
No, I know, but I just don't trust Fox.
She refused to speak with us, saying it was because we're Fox. Did you guys think it was ICE?
Potentially.
Yeah. When we turned to restaurant workers for answers, the organizer followed us inside, recording and telling employees in Spanish not to speak with us either.
Yeah, sorry to you. You're not getting nobody to talk to you.
Outside, straggler protesters also recording our camera, trying to stay incognito.
I think there's a place and time for everything.
This man arrived moments after the chaos ended to eat at the restaurant it all started. These are TSA agents.
You want to understand, people get very emotional, so they easily make mistakes. It happens, you take it out on the wrong people, which, same thing as ICE. They say they're after criminals, but they're taking it out on everybody.
The TSA workers eventually escorted out safely with no arrest or injuries, but a moment that highlights how tense emotions are across LA. So a moment of mistaken identity, but again, no arrest and no injuries. Reporting live tonight, Matthew Seedorf, Fox 11 News.
Yeah, so you see that, you heard that. These lunatics are so unhinged that they're showing up to random restaurants because they believe that ICE agents are eating at those restaurants and they're harassing random folks. They're not even sure. They don't even know if the people that they're targeting are actually ICE agents. But they show up anyways, and they make a whole bunch of noise and cause chaos and destruction, right? You heard that whistle that they blow everywhere, right? Annoying as hell. And it's like, well, at the very least, you know, you guys should be sure that you're targeting the right people before you do something like that. But they really shouldn't be targeting people at all. This should not be allowed to happen in our country. We should not be allowing these people to target federal agents, right? That's what's happening. That's what's happening. It's despicable behavior. So with that being said, we have to talk about another story across the other side of the country where there was another targeted operation that seemed to be mistargeted because you had a bunch of these lunatics that showed up to a Hilton hotel in New York City and invaded the lobby because they thought that ICE agents were staying there, except there's no proof and evidence that any ICE agents were staying there. And these people just happened to get mass arrested, right? Arrested in Mondami's New York City, which I found to be fascinating.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
Holding photos of people killed or detained by ICE, dozens of demonstrators hold themselves up inside a Hilton hotel in Tribeca, occupying the lobby for hours as over 100 others cheered them on outside on a cold winter night.
It is unacceptable for citizens to be gunned down in the middle of the street, protecting their neighbors, and this has to stop.
This man's fiance among those seen protesting the government's ongoing immigration crackdown operations here and across the country.
Because we are committed to a future here in the United States in which people are treated equally.
While it's unclear if any ICE officers are staying at this Hilton location on 6th Avenue, they say their voices are meant to send a message to any company working with Washington on this front.
These very ICE officers that the Hilton is allowing to stay comfortably in their rooms are kidnapping people, ripping apart families.
Ultimately, NYPD officers moved in. 45 minutes later, we watched them arresting upwards of 60 people who refused to leave. Earlier this month, in a tweet, the Department of Homeland Security condemned Hilton franchise owners in Minneapolis who reportedly canceled reservations for its agents. Actions the company said were, quote, not reflective of Hilton values of being welcoming to all. And tonight I reached out to the Hilton about this protest and the claims that ICE was staying here. Have not yet heard back about that or from the Department of Homeland Security seeking comment. Reporting live from Tribeca tonight.
Yeah, so you see that, you heard that. Now, Hakeem Jeffries decided to go on Fox News, and he was confronted with the fact that over 60 of his own constituents, right, these people in New York, these unhinged lunatics, got arrested. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it.
Leader Jeffries.
Yeah, it appears that members of the Trump administration don't think that the First Amendment applies. The freedom of assembly, the freedom to petition your government to change policies that you don't believe are in the best interest of the American people. They apparently don't believe that the Second Amendment applies, as has been demonstrated forcefully by the NRA. Clearly, they don't believe that the Fourth Amendment applies, the prohibition against unreasonable searches and seizures. The Trump administration has said that ICE doesn't apply, or the Fourth Amendment doesn't apply to behavior that DHS conducts itself. All we're saying is
these
that
are all
the
things
Department
that
of Homeland Security should be reined in a manner consistent with American values.
So these are things that they would push back on point by point, and I'll allow them to do that. We're going to talk to Senator Graham in just a moment. But I have one more question for you. In New York, your home state, the other night, there was a protest in a hotel in Manhattan. And the New York Police Department went in and they said because I want to point out that the Trump administration, they're saying you cannot put yourself in between a law enforcement operation. You can certainly protest, but you can't put yourself in between a law enforcement operation. So there were 65 New Yorkers arrested by the New York City Police Department. And Mayor Mamdani did not protest this at all. Do you support that action by the New York City Police? And why didn't we see that in Minnesota? Wouldn't that have been a good idea?
Well, I'm unfamiliar with that particular incident. I'm happy to look into it and come back on your show and comment on it. But what I will say...
This guy's such a clown, bro. He's such a clown. How, as a representative from New York, right, how do you not know that 65 of these people, your constituents, got arrested? Oh, I don't know. I can't speak on that. You know everything else, though, right? You know everything else, but you don't know that 65 of your constituents got arrested in New York City? Fascinating, right? It's almost as if this is inconvenient for him to talk about. He doesn't really want to speak on it. He can't say either way, because if he comes out and he says that, well, I don't agree with them being arrested, basically what he's saying is that he's pro chaos, right? He's pro these people being able to take over hotels, literally take over hotels, because that's what they did. They were trespassing. He's pro trespassing, right? Now, if he comes out and says that he does agree with their arrest, then the far left extremists are going to get mad at him. So instead he says, well, I don't know anything about this, right? Well, again, I got questions. If you don't know anything about it, then that is not good, right? You are a congressman from New York City. You should know about it. Again, you know about everything else that ain't got nothing to do with New York City, but you don't know about this. Fascinating.
Is that the American people, hundreds of millions of folks, saw a cold-blooded killing of Alex Pretty. He was called by the Trump administration a would-be assassin and a domestic terrorist. No, that was a malignant lie. We know he was an ICU
the president has already sent in Tom Homan to remedy the things that you're talking about.
Veteran. I hope so, but it remains to be seen.
All right, Leader Jeffries, hey, I'm surprised that you haven't heard about that arrest of 65 people in New York. You represent the 8th District in New York. You hadn't heard that 65 protesters were arrested in New York City?
Are you surprised that I'm here in Washington working to avert a government shutdown and make sure that ICE actually conducts itself like every other law enforcement agency in the country?
Let me ask you, do you think this is going to be resolved in the next 24 hours or so, this shutdown issue?
That's certainly my hope.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So you see that, you heard that. That is Hakeem Jeffries, once again showing us how much of a dishonest clown he is. Okay, let's be honest. He definitely knows. He just knows, politically speaking, it doesn't benefit him to speak on it or to really have an opinion on it, because it's a lose-lose, right? It's a lose-lose for him to speak on it. He can never speak on what his constituents are doing, right? When they break the law, when they get arrested, he's not going to say anything about it, right? He's not going to say, hey, you know what? I disagree with committing crimes, right? Committing crimes in response to what ICE is doing. He can't say that, right? Because he can't stand up to the far left mob, okay? He's essentially been castrated by the far left. So with that being said, it appears as if the Democrats in the Trump administration have reached a deal to avoid the shutdown, okay? And it looks like they are basically going to continue negotiating funding for the Department of Homeland Security, despite Democrats promising that they would defund it, right? That they're going to defund ICE, even though they really can't do much to defund ICE at this point. They want to defund the Department of Homeland Security. They want to get rid of Kristi Noem. I'm not sure how far they're going to get, but this is what we have. Senate Democrats have struck a deal with Republicans and the White House to pass 5 spending bills to fund a large portion of the government for the remainder of the fiscal year, as well as a stopgap measure to fund the Department of Homeland Security for 2 weeks while they continue negotiating guardrails to rein in immigration agents. It is unclear how quickly the House can and will process those funding bills after the Senate passes them. President Trump endorsed a spending deal between Senate Democrats and Republicans that would stave off a government shutdown while lawmakers continue negotiating guardrails to rein in immigration agents. Hopefully both Republicans and Democrats will give a very much needed bipartisan yes vote, Trump wrote on social media. Democrats have struck a deal with Republicans and the House to pass 5 spending bills to fund a large portion of the government for the remainder of the year. Yeah, so basically what's happening here, okay, is that Democrats are insisting that DHS be defunded, right, and that there be guardrails put on ICE. Now, we don't know exactly what Republicans want to do, but right now, considering the aftermath of what happened with this Alex Preddy situation, Democrats have a lot of leverage. I think waiting 2 weeks, and if things calm down, which they probably will, right, I think they're going to have less leverage. But this is low-key what Democrats want, right? Democrats low-key want an off-ramp to defunding DHS because that ain't something that they're actually really trying to do, right? They don't really want to do that because they know that Republicans are never actually going to agree with that. And if they actually did push forward with a shutdown, like a real shutdown of the government, then they will be stuck between a rock and a hard place, because then at that point they will be pressured to keep up the shutdown, because the far left is going to say they're going to have to shut it down and defund ICE completely or else, right? They really don't want to do that, right? They definitely don't want a government shutdown. They definitely don't want to go through that again. So at this point, 2 weeks essentially gives time for the situation to cool off, and then for the politicians to essentially agree to continue funding, right? Or long-term funding, because low-key, the Democrats like the fact that the ICE agents are enforcing immigration law, because that keeps the lunatics radicalized. And as long as the lunatics are radicalized, then that keeps them motivated to vote Democrat. So we're going to see what happens here moving forward. I don't think that the Trump administration should back down, but at the same time, I do get the optics of trying to cool things down and trying to make the lunatics less motivated to get in the streets and to sacrifice themselves on behalf of the Democrat Party, especially considering how the media is essentially lying about these situations. So I get where the Trump administration is coming from. It's just interesting to see how the politicians navigate this situation. You're going to have some Republicans that are going to want to cave to Democrats because they're afraid, right? They don't want to lose elections. They're also cucked as well, too. Let's keep it 100. They don't really want to do what should be done in order to deport the illegals in this country. So, you know, that's the situation that we're in. But as of right now, it looks like we're going to avoid a government shutdown, that Democrats aren't actually about that life, right? They don't really want to defund ICE or defund DHS, which is what they're demanding. They're trying to negotiate an off-ramp, right? So 2 weeks for stuff to calm down, and then they quietly agree to continue funding DHS. And that's basically what's happening here. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.